The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of AIHA. AIHA does not endorse any guest or the entity that they represent. On this episode of Healthier Workplaces, we take a look at some of the unique health and safety considerations in the film industry with our guests Taryn Toick and Levi Kimball. Stay with us.
Registration is now open for AIHA Connect 2025, the premier conference for occupational health and safety professionals. Join us from May 19th to 21st, 2025 at the Kansas City Convention Center for 3 transformative days of education, innovation, and connection. This year's conference brings together industry leaders, researchers, and practitioners to explore the latest trends, cutting-edge technologies, and essential training to advance your expertise in protecting worker health. Immerse yourself in a variety of engaging sessions, interactive learning opportunities, and professional development experiences. With over 200 exhibitors, you'll discover the tools and solutions shaping the future of workplace safety. Plus, you'll earn valuable contact hours while networking with peers from across the globe. Act now to take advantage of advanced registration rates, available for a limited time. This is your chance to save while securing your place at the event that drives the occupational health and safety community forward. Visit AIHAconnect.org to learn more and register today.
Welcome, Levi and Taryn. Great topic today. I would like to, I guess, start out by asking you a little bit about your background and what inspired the Behind the Lens session that you'll be doing at AIHA Connect. What do you hope attendees are going to take away from that? And I'll pitch it to you first, Levi. I guess you're at the top.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So I've been in the industry about 15 years. And probably close to about 8 of which we've been working in the film industry here. Obviously, we're a little closer to it than some other people might be, just because there is quite a heavy, film presence here in the Vancouver area of BC. We've been lucky enough to kind of been working in the industry here, and I know that field of industrial hygiene is quite broad. There's probably a lot of hygienists out there that have never worked in the film industry. And so I thought it would just be neat to, do a presentation on some of the more, unique aspects of the industry and what we've seen here. And, it might be something that a lot of hygienists haven't really thought about or seen. So, yeah, that's kind of how it started.
So, Taryn, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I actually have a similar background to Levi as well. We both did the University of British Columbia Masters of Science program in occupational and environmental hygiene. And I have been working with Levi at Aura Health and Safety for about 8 years. And right since I started with them, we had some work in the TV and film industry, which has been really interesting for me because as an industrial hygienist, that's not something that typically comes to mind when I'm thinking about kind of occupational worker exposures. So I think, I hope that when we do present our session, people can take away just kind of a new perspective and just a bigger general awareness of what hazards do exist within film, because there are a lot.
I mean, why do you think the role of OEHS professionals is often, I guess, goes unnoticed in the film industry, or it seems to? We don't hear much about it. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I really feel as though like the just total, not just hygiene, but health and safety culture in film is just not as like old and kind of long standing as like, typical industries, like heavy industry, construction, things like that. So I don't think that health and safety has been a focus as long. And then just due to other aspects where, just due to the nature of it, especially on like film sets, I mean, you kind of have to stay hidden to some degree because, you can't be in the shot and stuff like that. So there's other kind of aspects that you might kind of quote unquote be hidden. But I think that's a big one is that, the health and safety culture is maybe not as old and just not as established as some of the other kind of industries that you might think of when you think of like worker exposure.
And certainly the hours are crazy. I mean, right? I mean,
Definitely, yes.
production times are insane.
Yeah, no, I don't know how they do it, to be honest, because like it's exhausting when we're there, just kind of sometimes holding a clipboard and not doing anything too strenuous, and like these people are there even longer than us, and they're doing way more physical work and stuff. So yeah, it's quite the industry. Yeah.
I think that health and safety sometimes gets overlooked in film as well because of the nature of some of these productions where they can be very short and transient. Some productions we've been on are filming, between 8 weeks to 6 months. So I think sometimes that kind of pre-planning with safety in mind is not quite there yet. And of course, like most other industries as well, time is money. So I think sometimes safety planning can be seen as slowing down a production, unfortunately, still. But obviously, the repercussions of having any types of incidents or exposures greatly outweighs the pre-planning. But I think that kind of safety by design and thinking about it in a proactive manner is just not quite there yet.
So film sets are, by nature are constantly changing, right? And pretty dynamic locations, varied locations. How do these environments potentially create unique challenges for OEHS professionals working in the film industry?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah, go ahead, Taryn.
I think it can have huge implications. Mostly what we see is indoors at studios. We have some outdoor filming and then kind of filming on location. So I think the biggest thing that we've seen and kind of a challenge, which we've actually made big strides with, is getting in front of where they're going to choose their location before it's too late. The location scouts don't necessarily have training in what hazards might exist in a building or a place that they want to film. So they love finding these sort of decrepit old places. We've seen filming in like abandoned old barns, old factories, things like that, and they think it looks great. They love it. They say it has texture, and for their filming purposes, it's going to show up great on camera. But then we walk in there and we're kind of going, oh, asbestos, lead,
Yeah.
mold.
Yeah, the texture is like death all around them.
Yeah, that's why it has that texture
Yeah.
because, yeah. So I think like for us, we've been trying to get ahead of that and get involved earlier on because sometimes the fact of the matter is they sign a contract and they've decided that they'll take that place as is, right? And then it could have huge cost implications for them to get these locations up to a place where they feel safe working in there. But yeah, typically these types of departments don't have like asbestos training, lead training, mold training, that kind of thing. So that's a huge thing that we've seen here.
Yeah, big cost implications. Not only just to kind of possibly have to clean these places or make them kind of more safe just to occupy, but often they're doing construction activities to modify these places to enable them to have their sets and whatnot. And so that has a whole other aspect, right? Especially with the hazardous materials and the construction work that might impact them. So there's lots of challenges there, especially with these locations, as Taryn mentioned.
Yeah. So how do OEHS professionals collaborate with directors, producers, stunt coordinators, et cetera, to integrate safety into the creative process? Because like you mentioned on the people that are out choosing, possible locations don't necessarily have that expertise. I'm assuming that for the most part, directors and producers don't either, correct? I mean,
yeah, it's a fair point. And I think that, the longer we're in the industry, the more you do see people, come back again. So, they might have worked with us in the past, but often it's people that have not, and, they don't have health safety training. I think the biggest thing is communication, and it doesn't always happen, like quite often doesn't, but when it does, it's really nice to have really strong communication up front. So kind of before anything takes place, and kind of get everything on the table so that we know what their goal is and what the plan is, and then we can kind of explain to them, what concerns we might have and how we might have to go about doing assessments or kind of, putting controls in place to keep people safe. And if it's kind of talked about up front, then you can kind of get ahead of it and try to come up with a plan that, doesn't interrupt the creative process for them and kind of keeps us out of the way and hopefully makes everybody happy. But it can be a challenge, especially when there isn't the upfront planning and it's kind of last minute and we get called out and all of a sudden we're kind of thrown into some situation where we're trying to do a hazard identification, ad hoc kind of as they're already working and already there. So it can be challenging. And I think communication is really, the biggest part of that.
Yeah, this is a tough one for sure. And for us, when we are on site, say we're doing monitoring, I feel like oftentimes we are directly interacting with the directors of photography, who are pretty high up there in the chain of command on the film set. So I think our communication has to be really quick, concise, to the point. We don't have time on set to kind of elaborate and explain everything. So having a plan ahead of time is really great. I think that they do like us in some aspects because, we might be coming in and putting more of a quantitative reading to their qualitative creativeness. So we can help them actually sometimes with atmospheric fog, for example. They'll start asking us, they'll say, where's the fog person? What levels are we at? Because we can kind of give them a number to make sure that they're having consistency and continuity. But I find that on film sets, it does differ than other industries because it's almost militant in a way. They say lots of things like copy that, or they'll call for someone and only that person is responding. They can be a little bit abrupt in their nature, but it's only because they have so much to get through during the day and they're trying to stay on track. And again, time is money. They're having 150 people there every day, so they need to make sure they're keeping on their timelines with what they're filming. But I find just compared to other industries, because of that kind of abruptness, you just have to not take it too personally and just realize that they're just there trying to do their job. But having that communication piece is really key. You can't be taking up too much of their time during filming.
Yeah, that seems paramount. But I think a lot of people that are not involved in that aspect or involved in the industry, maybe only think in terms of, oh, you're worried about maybe just the camera crew and the talent, but there's so many other people involved in production, even on a small production, right? There's so from a health and safety aspect, you've got a lot of people that are behind the scenes that are not anywhere near the actual camera and stuff that you still have to be worried about their potential exposures or hazards they might be exposed to, right?
To be honest, that's probably the most of it, the lion's share of the people that are concerned with things. And really what we're looking at is all those staff and crew that the normal person watching Netflix, they wouldn't probably even know they exist or think about, right? But it's more rare where we're doing anything specific to the talent. It's usually more the 100 other people that are behind the scenes kind of doing everything and doing the work. It's much less glamorous than you would think. When I first kind of got introduced to it, it was kind of you have a picture in your head from watching movies and watching TV, and then you kind of get on set and it's 10 hours just went by and they filmed a 10-second scene and it's just repeat. And I would not describe it as glamorous at all.
No, it's not at all.
So,
yeah. Even video production like we do and stuff gets, can get really droll. And I've been involved with music video production, that sort of thing. And hours and hours of shooting the same thing over and over. Boring. Taryn?
It feels glamorous at first, especially like I said, being in industrial hygiene, it's very novel for us to be seeing movies behind the scenes, and it definitely is cool. But yeah, like Levi said, when you're standing there for hours and hours and hours monitoring atmospheric fog or doing some indoor air quality readings, that kind of thing, it definitely tires you sooner than you would think. But I think that's another thing too, right? We are there to do a job and we have to act very professional, but sometimes you're kind of ooh, that's how they do that. Or it's very fun.
Are you ready to elevate your knowledge and career in 2024? AIHA University's e-learning subscription has you covered. With a full subscription, you gain access to 24 contact hours of expert-led education throughout the year. Participate live in our exclusive AIHA University webinars or catch the recordings at your convenience. It's designed to fit your schedule and your goals. From cutting-edge tools to essential OEHS insights, the AIHA e-learning subscription delivers the latest trends, technologies, and best practices to keep you at the top of your field. Don't wait to unlock your potential. Visit aiha.info/e-learning sub and subscribe today.
Do you see any ways that OEHS professionals can better advocate about the importance of safety in industries like film production?
I think doing things like this, to be honest, like I don't know. I guess, well, you know better than me, but like I hadn't done podcasts until like recently. Like I've done, a few, and Taryn's done some, I think, but more recently. So I think the more doing podcasts, getting out there, going to conferences, not just hygiene conferences, but they do have like health and safety conferences that are specific to the film industry and entertainment industries. And so getting out there and talking at things like that, I think really does kind of like open people's eyes, and people know we exist. A lot of people don't know what an industrial hygienist is. You bring it up at a cocktail party and they think you clean teeth or something.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah, so I think
Or factories, clean factories too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hand washing and stuff. So I think that, doing things like this is really good and can kind of, spread the word.
I think too, like there's still a lot of work that can be done, because within the film and TV industry, there does exist a bit of a culture where people might not want to raise concerns that they have. And I guess that's the same in most industries, but in film specifically, a lot of people are doing day calls, or they're not on like a salary job position, let's say. And so they're scared that if they speak up and say something, that they might not be called back to that show, right? Their work and their livelihood depends on that. So I think trying to encourage people to speak up, and, working with other health and safety professionals who, work in film is really important to kind of get rid of these types of attitudes that exist.
Yeah, I mean, I totally concur with that too. I had the opportunity several years back to work on a show, just an episode for a show, and I won't name the show, but where there was a lot of construction going on, and the health and safety aspects that they were ignoring were absurd. I mean, to the point that I pulled my crew back and wouldn't let them stay on the set because it just violation after violation, and eventually somebody got hurt. Somebody fell off a roof and got hurt really bad. And it was totally avoidable. Nobody was tied off. Nobody was doing anything right. It was just like, because it was all about speed. Got to get done.
Yeah, well, we've seen it too. It goes back to that culture, like, like you say about construction, like same thing. We'll walk into like a studio and they're building the set, and like they're all doing kind of typical construction work. And like sometimes, I've seen like no steel toes, like no PPE, and like it's just like a totally other planet. If you go across the street where they're building a high rise and doing some of the same stuff, right? It's just like night and day. So
it's crazy.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. So I'm going to switch our camera angle and we'll go to the next question. Try to get it pre-edited in the can as much as possible so that our editor doesn't have to do very much. Let's see. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. So are there, okay, try this again. So are there technologies or methods on the horizon that could possibly help OEH professionals address some of the unique risks of film production more effectively? Because obviously it's a unique industry, and the time constraints, and just there's just so many factors that you don't have in a typical industrial workplace scenario.
Definitely. I think it's a really good question. We've been dealing with some of this like really recently, like specifically as a company. I think one of the things that can help are tools and apps. Everybody, you go to a film set and everybody's either on the tablet or, iPad, iPhone. And so we have been trying to create some apps for people where they can get information really quickly and enter parameters that might not necessarily be from like, a really high tech piece of industrial hygiene, monitoring equipment, but you might be able to get it from either from like a weather app already on the web, or like something really, like a cheaper piece of equipment you could get at like a hardware store, and you can enter some of those parameters and it can spit out some information much more fast than if you were doing like a more involved typical industrial hygiene assessment, like with equipment that you would have to rent from a specialty place. So that's one thing that we've been doing. Examples being like for heat stress, cold stress, and like wildfire smoke. So you can use things like that. I think that's helpful. There's other examples. Like a lot of the actual hygiene gear and indoor air quality equipment, I think is getting cheaper and smaller and quieter, and like you're able to get it a little bit easier. I know manufacturing and some of those things is going up. So if you're doing things like air quality, then it might not be quite as expensive, as involved as it might have been like 10 years ago, where you have to, rent these bigger pieces of equipment that are quite expensive. So that's another thing that's been helpful.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a big thing for us, right? We can't be making any noise with our equipment. So something like a dust track, a particulate direct read instrument, which you think is quiet. I've been on a set where I have it running and then they're about to roll. And then the director is saying, "What is that noise?" And I'm like, "Oh no, it's me," right? So I think we've been looking into, like Levi said, kind of smaller, literally silent direct read instruments. I think that maybe there's a future for wearables and other devices. Again, for certain people, not so much the cast or the actors, because again, we can't have anything in the shot for them, but we can put things on other people that are behind the scenes. And then in terms of kind of less technologies, but more just methods, I think we've been finding that, we work very closely with the special effects crews a lot. When they were doing an effect, that's typically where we're seeing exposures, whether it's atmospheric fog, fire, things of that nature. And, training these people has been quite successful too, I think. So we actually have a online training course called What the Fog. And we help them to be able to monitor their own fog levels and teach them how to do the TWA calculations, of, okay, we're halfway through the shift. How much more fog exposure can we have for the rest of the day, so that we don't go over? Because, with how long they work and the extended shifts, they can sometimes go over their limit fairly easily if they're not watching that. So, and the special effects crews are always great. They're highly technical people. So teaching them how to use a monitor is very easy. They catch on super fast. So I think kind of an education piece in that regard too.
I mean, so for OEHS professionals not in the film video production industry, what kind of lessons can they take away from some of the challenges and solutions that you come up with in the film industry? I've got to believe there's some lessons there that are applicable, right?
Yeah, I think being flexible, like to be honest, you might not always be able to look at something or assess something, the quote unquote kind of a typical way. So being flexible, kind of working with the industry you're in, and, coming to some kind of an agreement where you're able to do your job, get the data and keep people safe without kind of being like a massive hindrance on that industry and kind of affecting them in a negative way as they, whatever their goal is. Yeah. I
think too, like risk communication considerations, that's been a huge thing for us. The film industry can be, a highly unionized environment. There's lots of different types of personalities. We have to figure out how to communicate with, more creative people who maybe don't care so much about the numbers that we're showing them, but they just want a certain look. So that's been a big thing too. And just kind of knowing how to communicate that risk to them, so as to not create mass panic, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else? I think, yeah, like Levi said, being flexible, learning how to think outside of the box. Sometimes they're going to come to us and say, okay, we're going to have fires burning over here, and we're going to have an explosion over there, and then we're going to pump in a bunch of fog, and we're like, okay, let's figure out how we can work together and do this safely. And then lastly, I think one of the challenges that is in this field and not so much in any other field is working with children and infants and elderly people too. But film has all these different kind of more vulnerable populations that you're hopefully not seeing anywhere else. And it's kind of difficult because a lot of the typical occupational exposure limits don't apply, right? Because kids are not supposed to be working, quote unquote. So just learning lessons about how to adapt to that. And, of course, they're not working as long of hours, and they're not in the stage as much, and they're doing other things too. But that's been something that's been really unique and specific to the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're getting toward the end of our segment here, but I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to tell one key thing to our listeners about the importance of OEHS and film production and beyond. And what's one final takeaway that you'd each like to do?
I'd say just to kind of keep working at it, and if you are in an industry where the safety culture might not kind of be where you want it, to just kind of keep chipping away and kind of work. And like over time, you can see improvement and you can see attitudes change, and something that might be seen as kind of a big inconvenience, might eventually just kind of be seen as kind of, that's what we do. And it's kind of, more kind of just typical day to day, part of the job. And so, even in our kind of relatively short time in the industry, I think I really have seen attitudes change. And, some of the stuff we're doing, it's just more kind of commonplace now, and people are used to seeing us on site. Whereas when kind of, when I first was there, it was like, who are you? Kind of, what are you doing? Huh? Sort of thing. So I think just kind of keep working at it, and you can see improvements, even in challenging environments.
Yeah, I think, like Levi's kind of implying, there's still much work to be done. I think there's a much bigger awareness nowadays in the film industry, and people want a healthy and safe work environment. So if you take the time to talk to them, get to know them, learn about what they actually do, I think that they are open-minded and happy to have controls put in place. And like we're kind of saying, film has pretty much every hazard you could think of. There's all kinds of trades. There's welding, there's construction, there's woodworking. There's unique things like costumes, right? Working with flammable chemicals, special effects. It really goes on and on and on. So, I think if we can really get in that safety and industrial hygiene by design, like think of these things ahead of time and be a bit more proactive in the film industry, less reactive, which is unfortunately still kind of what we're seeing now. I think that would be great, and we could really make some strides.
Excellent. Well, Taryn, Levi, thanks for joining us on this episode of Healthier Workplaces. Looking forward to your upcoming session at AIHA Connect. Again, that's titled Behind the Lens. I'll be out in Kansas City, so that's excellent. Keep up the good work.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much.
So that's our show for this week. Until next time, I'm Bob Krell. Stay healthy.